How you going, everyone? Yep, I'm Scotty Schindler. Hey, listen, I, at the turn of the century, started a company. I did go on a successful entrepreneurial journey, and I exited and retired early. And today I'm going to talk to you about something I believe will interest you also. It's part of System 1357, and it's this bit here, the business of thirds. Before I get into that, I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction about business preparedness. Now, the business of thirds is what I use to help manage expectations. In the 90s, I used it as a strike rate in sales, and in business, I used it to understand success and failure. And I will get into that. But let me give you a bit of the backstory first. And the reason why I understand cycles, and the reason why I guess it was a good thing I left school in 1988, because when I left school then, the market was really booming. If you look along the coast here, that's when we built all the resorts where we live now. I mean, all the resorts were popping up everywhere. The market was so buoyant. Okay, and then what happened was, a couple of years later, after this sort of buoyant or boom time, we had the recession that we had to have. Now, I've got no idea why they said we had to have a recession, but nonetheless, we had a recession that we had to have. Interest rates back then, some people were paying 20, 21% interest on their loans. I mean, it was massive. We talk about housing affordability. I mean, wow. I mean, my mum in 1980 paid $27,000 for a house. And in 1994, I paid $172,000 for my house. My mum thought I was mad. And to be honest with you, I wasn't so certain myself. But that's how fast things can change. Anyway, so business goes back to usual. We go through the 90s. And we get to the year 2000. Now we've got the turn of the century. And guess what happens? They start talking about this Y2k bug. And business just went, oh no, what do we do? Now the business before the Y2k bug was booming. Everybody was buying computers, fixing up all the bugs, thinking the world was going to stop. No one wanted to be on a plane at midnight at the turn of the century because no one knew what was going to happen. The reality was it was a real threat, but it wasn't a real threat. So there was this system where computers only had 2 digits for their years, and no one knew what was going to happen if everything clocked over to being 00 instead of 2000. So it was a real threat, but really it turned out to be nothing. But didn't stop the market stopping. But what happened in Australia straight after that, and the reason why Australia stopped, was because we had the introduction to the GST. So no one knew what was going to happen. Everyone thought prices were going to go up by 10% and everything was going to stop and crash and burn. And guess what? It sort of did. The market completely stopped. It stopped before the introduction of the GST. As the GST got introduced and BASs were getting sorted out, people had to work out what to do with their taxes, and the Olympics was on, the market stopped. I mean, completely stalled. And then what happened was we moved into SARS and we moved into the World Trade Center. So over that period of, 12, 18 months, maybe even 2 years, the market completely stopped. But as all cycles, what follows winter? Summer. What follows summer is winter. And guess what happened? By the end of 2003, as we entered 2004, property prices since 2000 had doubled and some places tripled in value. The market was buoyant again. So what happened after all that uncertainty? What happened with all that doubt? Was business kicked up again. Hey, then it settled and we ended up cruising along again until we got to 2008. And here comes the next wave. We ended up with what was called a GFC. Totally out of our control once again. And why we had to have a GFC, a global financial crisis? I guess it was because of the good times we'd just gone through. And things had to settle down, have a market correction, as they call it. So we get through that. By 2010, we started to float around again and get back into sort of normal business. Although in saying that, my market, which was the real estate market in Australia, had shrunk by over 10%. In other words, over 10% of the real estate offices in 2009 into 2010 just shut their doors because there was no properties moving. Real estate agents make money when properties move. When they exchange properties is the only time they can make money out of real estate. Doesn't matter what the values are. So whether the market's low and nothing moving or high and nothing moving, they can't make any money. And in that period, nothing was moving. So with the global financial crisis, I lost 10% of my business that year, totally beyond my control. And some good people went out of business, unfortunately. But that's the way it was. So anyway, we go back to business as usual. Once again, this cycle. Okay, so we bounce out of 2010, out of the GFC, we're cruising along. Anyway, then all of a sudden, boom. In the last 2 years, something else that's out of our control. We end up with this global pandemic. Now, those three situations I'm talking about, which is the boom before the recession we had to have and the recession, the boom before the Y2k bug and the turn of the century with the SARS and the World Trade Center, and the boom and economy changes and cycles that we went through the GFC. I mean, no one picked those three cycles, right? No one picked the peak, no one picked the low. So what hope do we have to know when these markets are going to come and go? We don't. But at the same time, one thing history teaches us, and one thing that we've all gone through, is these cycles. So business preparedness is preparing yourself for when things are going to be good and when things are going to be not so good. And that's why today I'm going to introduce you to the business of thirds. It's a system that you can use to work out the good and bad times and budget for them. Now, before I get into the business of thirds, let me give you one more example of how what we need to do every day is try to work out the best things for us in business. Because like summer for someone's good and winter for someone's good. Everyone has different ways they're going to leverage on these cycles. But let me give you an example. So us as normal people, how do we pick the cycles? Well, certainly listening to the economists isn't going to help, because last year in May 2000, the world went into lockdown. The head of the Commonwealth Bank and the economist, the chief economist, said that the real estate market in Australia was going to plummet. In fact, the head financial person said that the real estate market in Australia is going to plummet by 32%. Wow, all of a sudden it'd be affordable again. But nonetheless, 32%. Now, not only did they get the direction wrong, they got everything completely wrong. Their forecast was going to be nearly double digits unemployment. So this is the Commonwealth Bank. This is Australia's largest financial institution. Nothing against them, by the way. It was just what they believed. I'm not saying they were wrong. It's what they believed. But if they can't forecast what's going to happen, what hope do you and I have? Well, here's the good news. I'm going to introduce you to the business of thirds. Now, if you've got your own system, that's great. If you don't, this is a system you can employ in your business to manage your success and failure, your highs and lows. Mostly manage your expectation, and once again, your business preparedness. Your business preparedness for every day, your business preparedness for next year, and your business preparedness for the next 10 years. It's called the business of thirds. So let me show it to you quickly. And there it is. So as you can see, there's a tick at the top, there's a cross at the bottom, and there's an opportunity layer in the middle. So if I use the last 30 years since I left school as an example, out of the 30 years, there was 10 awesome years where it was booming and growing. There was 10 years, which I would have much rather never have gone through. And in the middle was a bunch of years where it was actually up to me to take advantage of those opportunities. So this is how I've broken everything down into simple, easy to use chunks of thirds. So I started this system, by the way, when I was in the insurance business as a strike rate. So if I was to talk to 100 people, the people that spoke to me, the people that didn't want to talk to me, and in the end it gave me my strike rate. And in business I used it for exactly the same reasons. Because you know what's going to happen? Is a third of the time things are going to go good, and a third of the time things aren't. Now you never budget or really account for that, but if you don't at least allow that some things are not going to work, well, guess what? If you manage to hit that bottom third straight away, you're not going to have a great time. So you need to allow and even think about the unexpected. Preferably, you get to spend all your time in the top third. Now let's look at the thirds just quickly. So the top third, that's the success third. That's where everything's going well. That's where everything goes good. Let's use a sporting team as an analogy. Let's imagine I'm a sporting team. Over the last 10 years, I'm not sure which team you follow, but even if they've been the best team, let's call it in the league, I bet you they haven't won every single time, every single year, every single game. They haven't, have they? In fact, no one can. So no one lives permanently up in the top tick. It's where we all strive to be, and it's where our goals are, it's where our ambitions are, it's where we prepare for. In fact, 100% of the time, I'm going to tell you, prepare for the top. What I'm talking to you, though, is about looking at the other two thirds. Because the reality is, when things are going good, it's easy. Everybody can do that. Everybody can have business and respond and react to the good times. So where the difference comes in, and the topic of today is business preparedness, is about preparing yourself for these times in the middle, so the third in the middle, and the third at the bottom, when things don't go well. Your budgeting, your forecasting, and so on, for all three of those layers. So let's dive into it a little bit. Firstly, at the top. So the good thing about the top is that's where all your success comes from, right? That's where all the good times are. But it also can be a false positive. Because what happens is you can get this false sense of security that things are always going to be good. Things are always going to be booming. I've got 6 months, I've got a year's worth of work in front of me. I can see next year's going to be awesome. And you just cruise along, you roll with the punches, which is great. Take those days. Whenever business is like that, definitely take advantage of it. But what you need to start doing is you start looking and going, well, hang on a minute. What happens with the next third and the bottom third? What do I need to do? So sometimes the top third can be what's called a false positive. Look, it's great, but it can be a false positive. It's a bit like going back to that sporting analogy. You ever seen the best team of the year go out and then get beaten by someone down the bottom in the ranks? Because they took it easy. They got this false sense of security, this false sense of positivity. Okay, so it can be a false positive. So what you need to do is always be preparing for the things that can go good and bad. And this is the middle third. This is the layer where things can go either way. And the reality is that's where you spend the majority of your time in business. You're always trying to get things from opportunity to reality and success. So I'll come back to the opportunity layer. But let's look at the bottom layer. Once again, just like false positives, you've got to be careful that that's not a false negative. In other words, if you put into your forecast and you put into your preparedness that some things won't work, and even though you won't know what that is until you get there, you won't know what the next economy downturn is going to be caused from until it happens, you can prepare yourself. It's a bit like, when you go on holidays, you got a spare tire in the back of the car. You don't really want to use the spare tire in the back of your car, do you? But you got a spare tire. You're not going to take the spare tire out, are you? We're packing the car, I'll take the spare tire out for some room. No. You leave the spare tire in, just in case, okay? And most of us have never used our spare tire, but we still know it's there. We still know that something might go wrong, we have to get out and fix it. And that's what business is about. So, what are the threats? What are the weaknesses? What are the things that can go wrong? And what do I need to do, preferably to avoid them? Or if it happens, how can I prepare for that? That's what business preparedness is about. So you've got your top third, you've got your bottom third. The reality is we live most of the time in the middle third. In fact, if you go and watch the videos on System 1357, it's about 60% of your day-to-day activities and your preparedness is for 60% of the market. And the difference between the people that are hugely successful and have great businesses is how they tap into this business third. This middle third here is where 60% of your market potential is. So what I'm talking about with business preparedness is you need to prepare for the good times, you need to prepare for the bad times, and you need to maximize on the opportunities in the middle. And the more you can do that with the business of thirds, the more, hopefully, you'd never have to have this experience down the bottom come back and get you. Okay? Let me give another analogy. Fishermen, when they go fishing out at sea, now they hope never to have anything go wrong. But they take things with them like life jackets. They take things with them like EPIRBs. Why? Because every now and then there's going to be some bad weather that they might get caught in. Not intentionally. They don't want to get caught in it, but it happens. But if they didn't think about all the fish they're going to catch up here and the good time they're going to have on the ocean or the sailing they're going to do, if they didn't think about, every now and then something's going to go wrong, they wouldn't be prepared for when things don't go the way they plan. And it's the same in business, so business preparedness. You certainly spend all your time up the top and you want everything to go right, but you need to prepare for all three layers. The things that go well, the things that don't, and where all your market opportunity and potential is. But how do you now use the business of thirds in your business? Well, to be honest, you can use it a heap of ways. So the business of thirds works, like I said, with the success, the opportunity, and the failure. But it also works if you put it in, instead of vertical, you also turn around and put it horizontal. You can put your business into thirds this way too. Okay, so there's a whole heap of ways that I can teach you how to use the business of thirds in business to achieve your goals. But that is the most important thing. Out of everything that I'm talking about right now, the most important thing is your goals. Where do you want to be yourself? So number one, you. Where do you want to be yourself in the next year, the next 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years? Because your business is a vehicle to your success. Your business and career is how you're going to achieve all the things that you want. So it's very hard for you to use business preparedness if you don't know what you want. So get ready to set some goals. Okay, so look at the last 10 years and the cycles in your industry and business. Look at the next 10 years and map out where you think the market's going to go. What are the conditions, actions, and needs in your market? What do you think is going to cause the good times, and what do you think is going to cause the bad times? Now, some of those are known knowns. So if you're a farmer, you know a flood's not going to be very good for you. You know a drought's not going to be very good for you. Okay, so you know the known knowns. You probably can't forecast when they're going to happen, but if you look historically over the last 10, 20, 30 years, it's constantly gone in cycles. So in your business, in your industry, what are your known knowns? What are those things that you know? Like if you're a cafe owner, you know at Christmas time, you've got this burst of population. You're going to be flat out for 6 or 8, maybe even 10 weeks if you're lucky. And the rest of the year is just normal business. And then even so, like I said, you got the times where there's not many people here, there's not many people visiting because of the fact there's bad weather, it's winter, whatever it is. So everything goes in cycles, everything goes in waves. So what I want you to do is if you get the business of thirds model out, have a look at your business, your industry. What are all the things that make it tick, and what are all the things that make it work for you at the top? Put them all in that list. Put them up the top, because that's where you want to spend the most amount of time, because that's where you get the most amount of results. But when we talk about business preparedness, you're actually preparing for the things you don't know yet. So you have to try and forecast. You have to try and think about where is the market going. So if that's what's good right now, if that's all the ticks right now, because everything goes in waves, what's it going to look like in 2 years' time or 3 years' time or 4 years' time? How can I prepare myself for what's going to be at the top of the third in a few years' time? Okay, so that's what's important. And some of those things might end up down the bottom in 3 or 4 years' time because of technology, because of innovation. In 10 years' time, the way the industry works could be completely different. So just a little backstory, that's how I picked. When I introduced ReNet as a real estate software product that was cloud-based, before it was called a cloud, it was called internet. In fact, at the turn of the century, I actually had to explain to everyone what Google was. But let's get back out of that. I looked at it and thought, these real estate agents would probably want to be able to log in on their computers from home and be able to check on their databases. And I thought, I reckon that's where the market's going. So I had a bit of a look at it, and guess what? Turned out I was right. But it wasn't because I just rolled with the punches, because I had that bit of vision. Where's the market going? And I wanted to make sure I positioned myself and prepared myself that if I was right, I could take advantage of that market before anyone else. Now, I wasn't the only person doing it, but nonetheless, I got to take advantage of it. What I thought was going to disappear, was some of the things, the way the traditional things were done in the real estate industry. And it turned out, once again, they did disappear. But people actually thought the whole real estate industry was going to disappear. But it's still there, and if anything, it's probably stronger than ever. So sometimes get your business thirds and try to analyze where you're going to be. Set your goals. What are you going to prepare for is because you know what you want. You know what you want personally, you know what you want business-like, and you can prepare for that. Put it into the success and failure and have a look at what you think it's going to be like in each layer. So next year, in 3 years, 5 and 10 years' time, have a look at your industry, have a look at your business. What are your products? And that's one way you can use the business of thirds to prepare yourself for what it is that you want to achieve. Well, hey, it worked for me. It's a really simple system. And I believe it'll work for you too. So do yourself a favor, get your pen and paper out, break things into thirds, and keep things nice and simple. Because the simpler they are, the easier they are for you to understand and execute. All right, everyone, thanks for that. That's the end of my session today. But if you want to learn some more, there is definitely more on System 1357 you can go and look at. I've just finished and launched a book called Build a Business You Can Sell, although I actually am a big believer in build a business you can keep. So you can go read the book if you want to as well. But meantime, I've also put up a prize if you want to go and enter that. So I've given away a free session worth $1,000 for business coaching and training. So go on, put yourself in for that in the draw, because someone from today is going to get themselves a few hours with me with business coaching on either sales, business, or leadership. So thanks everyone for your time. Strive for healthy, wealthy, and wise. We'll talk soon. See ya.